Hello out there in YouTube land. My name is Ted E. Fame. I'm the last surviving member of Tony Williams Platters. I was in Tony Williams Platters for 10 years, from 1982 to 1992, the year that he died. I'm going to be telling you a series of stories about my time being a member of the Platters, 10 years worth. So I'll be talking about different years. This particular episode, I'm going backwards this time. So I'm going to talk about the day Tony died. So in order for me to tell you about actually the day he died, I need to give you a bit of backstory. So 1991, the end of 1991, we were performing in Singapore with the Coasters and the Drifters. It was a big thing. We were out there for, I think, 7 days. And it was a big thing to do. And the press was there. I did very good shows. I was kind of like the highlight of the shows then. As a matter of fact, I got a song called Shout that was like the showstopper. And you can find that song, me performing that song with the Platters, on this channel. Just go to my playlist and look for the Platters and look for the song Shout. And you'll see me performing that song with the Platters, and you'll understand why things happened for me the way they did. So basically, the club owner was so impressed by my performance that he offered me my own opportunity to be with my own band, to be the opening act for other artists and other groups that came into that establishment. And long story short, I accepted a contract. We were contracted. He had contracted me the following year in April. Now, all this is being done without the Platters or management knowledge. This was some under the table thing. And I was in my 9th going on my 10th year. So I was already at a point where I was ready to make a transition. I felt like I gave the Platters everything I had, and I wanted to branch off. And Tony's health was really bad, and I knew he didn't have too much longer here with us. There were shows that being canceled or rescheduled. So we did that show. We did that tour at the end of '91. We came back to America, and like I said, I was already contracted to go back in '92 of April. So when we normally have Christmas and New Year's shows, but that particular year we didn't have any. So that was our last show for that year. We didn't have anything else scheduled, but the management had told me to be ready and prepared for some last minute shows that might just pop up. So the following year, '92, I got a call from management saying that we got a booking for February 14th, Valentine's Day, here in the States, and another one for March, and a possible April. Now, granted, I told you that I had already made my decision to leave the group in April, so they don't know that. So we actually did the February Valentine's Day show, and we also did the March show. April came up, and it didn't get here yet, but before the date of that show to come, I had called management and let them know that I wasn't going to be available for that particular show, and that they need to find a replacement for me for that particular show. Well, management wasn't too keen on that ideal and sort of gave me an ultimatum. If I don't do the show, then whoever they find to replace me for that show will be my permanent replacement. And like I said, I was ready to exit solo. To me, that was cool. Now, granted, this is 1992. Now, what's so important about this is that's the year Tony died. So I went ahead and left the Platters in April, went to Singapore, and that was for April, May, June. That was for 3 months, right? That was the contract. Actually, we did the 3 months. It was great. We turned the place out. So much so that the owner of the club in Singapore wanted to extend us for another 3 months, which I gladly took. So they extended us for another 3 months. So April, May, June, July, August, September. Okay? September was when we were supposed to come back. So after we got the extension, everything was going well. I wasn't in so much contact with anybody from the Platters, but I did stay in touch with one of the musicians. His name is Johan. He was the drummer, and a couple of other musicians. Well, to make a long story short, August came up. The date was August. I want to make sure I got the date because it's been a long time. The date was August 14th. I thought I knew it. The date was August 14th. And I heard on, like most of the people in the world, I heard on the news, Tony Williams of the Platters has just died. I was like, wow, I couldn't believe it. Now, granted, I'm in Singapore and I found this news out. So I've been in that group for 10 years. So I had relationships with everybody in the group. So I called Tony's wife, Helen, who was actually the female in the group. And we had a pretty good relationship. Yes, she was not so happy that I left the group, but she was more like a mother to me. You got to remember, I joined the group in 1982. I was 22 years old. Everybody in the group was like 20 or more years older than me. So I was like the baby of the group. So she was like a surrogate mother kind of like to me. So we had a really good relationship. So we had talked, and she told me Tony passed, and he had conditions. When I want to give you the report because I knew about some of his health conditions, but they said he suffered from emphysema, chronic alcoholism, and the effects of a stroke. He also had high blood pressure. I knew that. He was in and out of the hospital a lot in 1990 and 91. I thought he was going to pass sooner than that. But I knew, she told me that, so this is what she told me. She told me her and Tony, the night of August 14th, her and Tony went to bed, or August 13th. He was pronounced dead August 14th. Helen and Tony went to bed like normal. She lays on the left-hand side of the bed. He's on the right-hand side of the bed. And there's a TV at the foot of the bed, so they watch TV while they lay in bed. And she said, he fell asleep. She watched TV until she fell asleep. Everything seemed normal. She woke up, if I'm not mistaken, she said she woke up early that morning. I forgot what time, but early that morning, maybe between 6 and 7. And she noticed that Tony wasn't moving. And she reached over to shake him, and she said he felt stiff. And she touched his face, and his face was cold. And she said she knew right then he was gone. Apparently, he passed sometime during the night in his sleep while they both was asleep. She was lying right next to him when he passed. You know, she's no longer here either. She passed in 2004. She passed. No, I'm sorry. 2007. She passed in 2007. So she said she touched him, and she knew right then. And he was sick. He was really sick during that time. As a matter of fact, she said they didn't work anymore that after the April show. They did do the April show, but after the April show, they didn't work anymore that up to that point of that year. They didn't take any more bookings. He wasn't able to sing. He wasn't in good health. His health was really bad then. You know, I tell you this, most of the time when we're performing, if he's not singing lead, we have a chair on stage, and he will sit down while one of us sing lead. And he would only stand up to sing his part, and then he would sit back down. And this was going on in the 80s, all the way up to the time I left the group. I can't remember a time being in a group. Maybe, no. Maybe the first year, 82. I'm trying to think. I think he might have had a chair then. All the times I can remember being on stage with him, he had a chair. So that year, 92, his condition was really bad. I remember that Valentine's Day show. It was really bad. It was really bad. His voice wasn't. His voice had already deteriorated, but his stage presence wasn't even good anymore. And the March show, the Valentine's show, was just us, so we had to do like an extended show. But that March show, we was on a bill with some other groups, so we only had to do like 4 or 5 songs, the hits. And because the people loved him so much, you know, they gave him a pass, so he was passable. But after that point, they wouldn't book any more shows. And like I said, in August of that year, he died. So now my extension was until September. So by September of that, my contract expired. So we all came back to New York. We from New York. So I went to visit Helen. And this is a month after he died. So they had already buried him. They had the funeral and all that stuff and buried him. And I told Helen that I wanted to go and visit his grave. So she told me where it was at. I can't remember now, but I have it here, so I'll tell you what I have here. He was buried at the Calverton National Cemetery in Suffolk County, New York. I think that might be Long Island. And so I actually I got the information and address, and I actually went to visit his grave. And here is, I don't know if you could see it, here is his tombstone. It actually says Samuel Williams. Tony was his nickname. Samuel was his birth name. So it actually says Samuel Williams. And you know what? Look at this. They actually buried him because he was in the military. And the military actually buried him and it don't cost the family nothing to do because the military doing it. Since he was honorably discharged, when he passed, the military buried him. So I wasn't at the funeral. So yeah, this is it. I just made a copy of it. That's his headstone. So I wasn't at the funeral, and I didn't go to the cemetery when they buried him. I went afterwards. So this is a picture I got off. I didn't take a picture personally, but I got this off the internet. So yeah. Helen, I stayed with her. Actually, when I came back to New York, I stayed with her for a while, for about a month. I lived with her for about a month, because I was like a son to her, And they lived on. Check this out. They lived in Columbus Circle. If you know anything about Manhattan, Columbus Circle is like where Central Park starts, on 7th Avenue and 59th Street, or 58th. And she had a penthouse apartment with a terrace that go all halfway around the building on a penthouse. And you can look out of her penthouse and see Central Park. So I stayed with her because she was alone after Tony passed. She had some grandkids from a previous marriage and a son that lived in New York, and he would stay with her occasionally, and the grandkids would come up to see her. And she had another daughter who lived in the Bahamas. So me and Helen was close, and she wanted to keep the group going, but without Tony, it was just another imitation Platters, and I didn't want to have anything to do with it. So I told her that I wasn't interested in rejoining the group. In actuality, after I visited her and stayed with her for a month, I had kept in touch with a lot of the agents. So one of the agents ended up booking me in Japan. And I ended up living in Japan for almost 10 years, And I came back to New York like in 2000, right before the World Trade. I think maybe the year the World Trade Center came down, like a month or so before the World Trade Center came down, I had moved back to New York from Japan. So I got to spend some more time with her when I came back to New York. And like I said, she passed in 2007. And when I came back to New York, I stayed with her again for a while. I think I stayed with her until 2004. And her health started getting real bad. Her health was going down. After Tony, she was ready to go. She didn't really have anything to live for anymore, if you ask my opinion. I think Tony was the reason why she even wanted to live. And when he died, I'm surprised that she lived as long as she lived. She lived another, 12, 14, 15 years after Tony passed. Surprisingly, Tony passed in 92. She died in 2007. So, Anyway, that's what this video is. I'm going to be making more videos and talking about my time being a member of the Platters. So this one, it was on my mind, and I wanted to talk about this one because I know there's a lot of Platters fans out there that's going to love to hear these stories by a former member of Tony's group, the last surviving member of Tony Williams Platters. So I have a lot of information. I can only talk about the stuff that I was privy to experience. I can't talk about anything that happened before I joined the group, and only when I was in the group. So I got a lot of stories to talk about. So I wanted to talk about this one. I talked about another one earlier about how Tony lost his voice. So check that one out. Like I said, if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe and like my page and my channel, and watch some of the videos. Okay? So until next time, this is Ted E. Fame, last surviving member of Tony Williams Platters. Love. Peace.